Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. 60 miles east of West Palm Beach, Florida, lies the scenic Grand Bahama Island, an island that relies on tourism, forest products, and fishing to enhance the economy. Freeport is one of the Grand Bahama Island's major cities on the ocean front. A picturesque place known for its national parks, tropical rainforest weather that rarely drops below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, its extensive underwater cave system beneath the Lucayan National Park, and the perfect place to stay to conduct international business. A lot of people say everything's better in the Bahamas, but in 2003, the residents of Freeport could not have disagreed more. Let's get started. In the summer of 2003, local schoolboys who worked as grocery store bag boys at a Winn-Dixie supermarket in Freeport started to disappear. Not a lot has been published about the little boys who vanished. This is what we do know. On May 9th, 2003, Jake Grant was 12 years old when he went missing. On May 16th, 2003, Mackinson Colas was 11 years old. The little boy never came home and was last seen by his mother. On May 27th, 2003, 13-year-old D'Angelo McKenzie was last seen by his grandfather before he disappeared. On July 29, 2003, a mother would see her 11-year-old son, Junior Ream, for the last time. September 28, 2003, another mother would be the last to see her teenage son, 14-year-old Desmond Roll. He clocked out of work at the Winn-Dixie that morning to go home, but he never made it there. All of these boys also loved to play video games together at an arcade not far from where they worked. People began whispering to each other, spreading rumors of satanic sacrifices, organ harvesters, and witchcraft. The residents were overwhelmed by fear, conspiracies, and suspicions. Police were no help, and even with FBI profilers, there were no answers for the scared, worried family members or the panicked citizens. After Junior Ream vanished, authorities reached out to John Walsh of the TV show America's Most Wanted, pleading for his help. They were at a loss and didn't know what to do next with no evidence or clues. All of the children's pictures were aired on America's Most Wanted, but one day after another went by and no one had phoned in any tips or brought forward any information. It was another dead end. As people were so desperate and anxious for answers, they were unsure why the police were dragging their feet, not putting much effort into finding the children. Police were frustrated by all of the fuss and got extremely defensive. The authorities eventually stopped talking to the community and went silent. People were gathering in heaps, rallying in the streets, showing their support for the boys' families. They came in droves, bringing awareness to all the missing boys in hopes that someone would come forward with any information. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and right under everyone's noses, that's when Desmond Roll mysteriously disappeared. With all of the satanic ritual and witchcraft talk swirling throughout the city, Haitian immigrants were thrust into the spotlight and scrutinized by many who lived in the Bahamas for their voodoo practices. Maybe one of the migrants were behind the devilish-seeming disappearances. People of the Bahamas pointed out that Haitians came from a country that was anarchistic and violent, while they, on the other hand, took pride in excellent behavior, good deeds, and abiding by the law. The tension between citizens of the Bahamas and Haitians began during the summer. The people of the Bahamas' efforts and struggles to find a reason why these boys disappeared unfortunately placed the blame on anyone and anything to help them formulate a scenario to make the puzzle pieces fit where they really didn't. The families and Bahamas residents wanted all of it to make sense, somehow, some way. The whole Grand Bahama Island was experiencing a shockwave of hysteria. There were whispers of the possibility that the boys were kidnapped by foreign slave traders, being sexually exploited, and experiencing sexual abuse. The city's residents even began to spread rumors about authority figures perhaps being involved. The police kept quiet and did not respond. They hoped the silence would force people to stop attempting to annihilate the reputations of many. Freeport News ridiculed police for not keeping the public up to date during the investigation. Quote, "We suspect that this constriction of information is more of a political than a law enforcement decision. This does not make sense. The media can be a valuable ally to discredit rumors before they do the damage that was done to the good names of several prominent Grand Bahamians recently when they were linked to the disappearances." In October of 2003, the community of Freeport would be stunned by breaking new developments. On October 8th, a few mothers and their sons who were minors were taken in for questioning. At the minimum, there were at least 3 boys taken in, one being 11 years old. The police would keep them there for 96 hours without charges. If no charges were made, they had to let them all go. Officers went to the Winn-Dixie supermarket where the boys worked and sealed the store off in order to search. That sparked up even more rumors about human body parts being hidden in a food store freezer. Police argued there was no truth to those speculations. After one mother was permitted to leave the police station, she went straight to the media to air her grievances. The woman said she needed her son back. They were treated horribly, and she wanted to take her own life as a result. After going down every path they could think of, they reached out to foreign experts to assist. Officials from the FBI, Scotland Yard, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the U.S. came together in the search efforts. Residents stood by and observed as the forested area behind the Tivoli Gardens apartment building was being thoroughly searched. Lindy Russell, Member of Parliament, was disgusted by the media. He believed the investigation was being hindered and disrupted due to the way the news outlets handled these cases in a tactless manner. Lindy said the media was doing more harm than good to the families as well. He didn't stop with the media. Lindy criticized other members of Parliament for not taking more initiative. He was chastising the government for not doing more and moving at a faster pace to help families who are living in areas not as affluent as others. These places were susceptible to sexual predators who could take advantage of children and adults. On October 10th, another break in the case occurred regarding 12-year-old Jake Grant. Freeport was blown away again when the police revealed 4 young Haitian boys were being charged with the manslaughter of 12-year-old Jake Grant, the first of the boys to go missing. His disappearance and death, however, was not associated with the other missing cases. The juveniles' ages ranged from 11 to 13. The unrelated incident happened when Jake Grant and his friends went for a swim. The 13-year-old in custody claimed it was a freak accident in the swimming pool. Jake's hand allegedly had gotten stuck in the pool. The friends were rattled as their friend was drowning, and they were doing their best to pull him up. Water started coming out of his nose. As the boys freaked out, they dragged Jake out of the water, abandoning him when he was still alive at that point in a forest nearby. They buried him in shrubbery next to a fence where he eventually passed away. The residents of Freeport were astonished. After finding that out, they had more questions than ever before. Officers stayed tight-lipped about Jake Grant's death. They never said if they thought it was an accident or not, and would not tell anyone how they believed he died. At the time, they kept information from Jake's parents, too. Authorities would not even tell them if they had found Jake's body or not. All of the young boys pleaded not guilty. No evidence was brought against them in court. Jake's stepfather, James Ellis, told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, quote, "What could have happened? I'm still trying to get that story. They ain't saying if they found him. All of us are upset. His mother and sisters don't look good. They're crying all the time." After court, the kids were transported to a juvenile detention center, and they were held there until their next court date. Only one of the boys had a lawyer at the time, and his mother told the news that the police tried their best to get a false confession out of her son by coercing him. A different mother, whose 12-year-old was one of the boys charged with manslaughter, spoke out about them being innocent and how people in positions of power were stomping all over their son's rights. Quote, "Everyone should know how the police are really handling this case. Why are they holding them for 5 months? They don't have evidence, so they're going to gather some," the mother said. She continued to talk about how she sent clothes to the jail for her son, but when she saw him in court, he had on the same clothes she last saw him in 3 or 4 days earlier. The distraught mother wanted so badly to hug her child, but the police would not allow it. Every time the children's mothers would call, the boys were weeping out of fear and the fact they were being cursed out by authorities. As all of this was transpiring, people of Freeport were ready to take things into their own hands in order to, quote, "stop the disappearances themselves." Due to people becoming more hostile as time wore on, the boy who confessed about Jake Grant had to be moved to a detention center where it would be safer. The father of the boy who confessed told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel that he did believe his son was there, but did not kill Jake Grant. He acknowledged his son should have alerted police or told an adult right away what happened, and not doing so was where he fell short. quote, "He's not guilty of manslaughter, but he's guilty of violating his friendship. I'm trying to stay calm and let the law take its course and try to be there for my son. He didn't say he was sorry, but I could see it. He's crying all the time," the father said. One of the grandmothers of the second missing boy, Mackinson Colas, was sure those boys being interrogated knew more than they were saying. Everyone had questions. She told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, quote, "They got to find out about the rest of them boys. These children, they know." It was reported in 2011 that eventually the manslaughter charges against the boys were dropped. As for Jake Grant's remains, they have still never been found. The public demanded answers. They wanted to know if the police thought it was possible that the missing boys were victims of organ harvesters selling their organs on the black market. The officers did speak up, saying they did not have any evidence that would suggest that to be the case. On October 26th, the word around Freeport was spreading at lightning speed that 2 bodies were found at Barbary Beach, and someone had been taken into custody. The police went on to refute the claims, saying those speculations were bogus until 3 days later. 35-year-old Cordell Farrington turned himself in. He was arrested and charged for 5 murders. 4 were the little boys, and the other was a 22-year-old male who had been missing since 2002. At the time of his arrest, Cordell was employed at a warehouse called Kelly's Freeport Limited, which was close to the Winn-Dixie supermarket. Not a lot is known about his past as a child or young adult except his own claims of being abused as a child. Prior to his arrest in 2000, he had been in a drug rehab facility in New Providence. While there, he met his partner, Jamal Robbins. Friends did say that Cordell was very upbeat and an intelligent man who would read the Bible frequently throughout the day, and he was addicted to crack cocaine. However, he had not used in a long time, supposedly. Cordell also had an ex-girlfriend who only is identified by her last name, Dean, in newspapers. She and Cordell met at a gas station. They started to live together a while before the little boys started going missing that May of 2003, and even had a 3-month-old daughter together. Hours before Cordell decided to turn himself into the police, Dean broke up with him because she suspected he was using crack again. Authorities went to Dean's house to search, and they discovered 3 boxes of Cordell's that he normally kept in his own spare room, where he would make art with driftwood and conch shells. Dean was not aware of what was in the boxes because Cordell did not allow her to go into his art room. Before he turned himself in, he took the boxes and placed them onto Dean's mother's porch and instructed the police where to go find them. The cardboard boxes contained human bones in plastic bags, and each bag had a number on it. Cordell guided investigators to many other skeletal remains that he disposed of all along the east end of Grand Bahama Island. Before Cordell met Dean, he did have 3 roommates in 2002, one being Cordell's past lover, Terrio Floyd. They met in January of 2002. Not even a full week went by before Cordell was living with Oterio and his other two roommates, Elkin and Joseph. In February of 2002, Oterio said Jamal Robbins began to come into the picture, staying at the apartment frequently. Elkin and Joseph moved out in the springtime. On July 17, 2002, Oterio arrived home from work around 12:30 midday. He could hear Cordell and Jamal inside bickering before he got to the door. Cordell was yelling at Jamal, begging him to give up selling his body for money because he could contract AIDS. After the argument was over, he told Oterio in a playful way, quote, "I would kill that boy." Later on in the day, everything had calmed down, and that night, everyone went to their bedrooms as usual. Oterio was in a deep slumber when he was suddenly awakened to the sounds of frantic banging on his door around 6:30 that morning. It was Cordell screaming, "Terry, Terry, Terry, I killed him!" Oterio was frustrated that Cordell was loudly waking him up. He didn't believe Cordell, but chose to get up and see what was going on. As he walked behind Cordell and barely into the next bedroom, he could not believe it. There, on the floor, dead on his back, lay Jamal. Oterio stopped at the door and would not go in. Cordell began hastily scrubbing the floor, getting Jamal's body covered up. All the while, Oterio was sobbing loudly, "What have you done in our home?" as he wandered up and down the hall, afraid. Cordell told him to snap out of it. Oterio recalled during his testimony at trial in 2006, quote, "He shook me and said, 'Terry, Terry, catch yourself.' He said he would harm me and kill my family." Cordell marched back to the bedroom, finished soaking up the blood with bath towels and bed sheets, and completely wrapped up Jamal Robbins' body. He told Oterio he could not pick the body up by himself. The two carried Jamal's lifeless body all the way to Cordell's car and into the trunk. Off the Grand Bahama Highway, they abandoned his body. Oterio said he felt like he couldn't tell anyone, not his mother, not the police, because he was gay. The jurors watched the videotape of Cordell Farrington confessing Jamal's murder to police, and merely hours after, he was begging Jamal's family to forgive him. He said the day he killed Jamal and what took place had haunted him the last 3 years he had spent in prison. He wished things had not happened the way they did, and if he had only taken a little more control of himself, Jamal would still be alive. He even said he felt Jamal was still with him, that he loved Jamal so much and felt that he knew him better than his own family did. Cordell said he had lapses in memory at times due to the abuse he suffered in his childhood, which he also said during his confession. He stated after a few months of living together, Jamal had gone back to his drug habits, and to be able to afford it, he began stealing and selling himself. The argument Oterio came home from work to that day, Cordell claimed was about Jamal wanting to leave him because he could no longer afford him. Cordell said that made him so furious it drove him to kill Jamal that night. As Jamal was asleep in bed, Cordell grabbed an iron plank, hitting Jamal as hard as he could across the head. then immediately started to assault him with the iron plank from head to toe until he was no longer breathing. He explained how he wrapped Jamal up into a blanket, how Otario and himself carried Jamal's body out of the house into the car and discarded his body in an area of shrubs alongside Grand Bahama Highway. In December of 2002, Cordell went back to where they disposed of Jamal's body, making sure he was properly deteriorating so he could eventually bring Jamal's remains home with him, stored in cardboard boxes. When he was asked why he wanted to keep Jamal's remains, Cordell told the police he had in his mind all along that he was going to gather the remains and conceal them. He knew how vital it would be if the police came across them, but, he added, he wanted Jamal to be close to him for as long as possible as well. During his confession, police asked Cordell if he would ever kill again, and he responded, "Yes, it's only a matter of how and when." In 2008, Cordell's murder conviction and death sentence was overturned by the Court of Appeal, changing his charge to manslaughter and his sentence to life. This was due to a disease of the mind that diminished his responsibility. That year, when Cordell was finally convicted, the 4 bereaved mothers and family members were at last able to pay their final respects to their children in a mass funeral at the Community at Heart Tabernacle of the Church of God of Prophecy. 4 small blue caskets, each one garnished with a large arrangement of white and blue flowers, were closed shut, containing only what remained of 4 lives gone too soon. Beside the caskets were framed photographs of the children. July 27, 2008, BahamasWeekly.com reported, tributes through song and dance from an all-male quartet and a pantomime duo reflected the depth of how many persons were touched by the missing boys. During the first Reverend's sermon, he told the congregation that even though many would not understand why this had to happen to the young boys, the missing boys' case did change the way the nation views children. The Reverend said, quote, "We might not fully understand why things turn out the way they turn out, but I can tell you, brothers and sisters, that the situation with the missing boys ought to have changed our attitude and how we look at children and how we treat them, and not only that, but the direction in which this country is going. I am not convinced that more policemen and more police cars and equipping policemen with guns and equipping policemen with bulletproof vests and by giving them more equipment will solve the crime problem in this country. I am not convinced that the FNM government or any other government that may be elected in this country can deal effectively with crime. The PLP tried and failed. The FNM tried and failed. It is time that we recognize that the answer lies in what we do with our boys, in teaching our boys and teaching our girls the Word of God. Only God can save this nation." Another reverend spoke and said, quote, "Parents, take an active role in the lives of your children. Take time in getting to know them, know their friends, know their schedules, and spend as much quality time with them as you can, for tomorrow is promised to none of us. I would also like to take this opportunity to change the policymakers of our nation and the wider community on an issue that I am very passionate about, and that is justice. Justice is not just for one, but justice is for all. What is the price of a young man's life? What is the value of his life in this community? Do you know his worth? Today, the community is at a loss because they will never know. They are deeply saddened and heartbroken over the way they left. They left behind pictures, memories, thoughts, and questions. How would he look after 5 years? Closure and healing could not properly begin for the families until they saw their baby's murderer behind bars forever. Cordell would finally be sentenced for the murders of the boys in 2010, 7 years nearly to the day when the last boy's life was taken. The court finally heard what happened to the 4 young children in detail. The parents and other relatives tried to keep their composure, which was understandably difficult for them to do. Mackinson Colas was 11 years old and vanished on May 16, 2003. He was last seen by his mother. Cordell Farrington recalled he picked Mackinson up on Pioneer's Way, Freeport, and took the little boy home with him, ordered the child to take a shower, and told Mackinson he was about to die. According to his confession, Cordell said that when Mackinson asked why he had to kill him, he responded by saying frankly he, quote, had to do it. Cordell told police he tied up the 11-year-old child by his hands and feet using duct tape, then proceeded to smash him over his head again and again with a wooden board. After the little boy had died, Cordell placed his body in the trunk of his car and drove away to Barbary Beach, where he buried Mackinson. 2 weeks later, he went back to the beach to collect the child's remains. After hearing those details, one of Mackinson's sisters could not take it anymore. She began to shout and cry out, "You took my brother from me! You are supposed to die!" The judge had to make numerous relatives leave the courtroom. D'Angelo McKenzie was 13 years old and last seen by his grandfather on May 27, 2003. Cordell told police as D'Angelo was strolling home from school, he picked up the child in the parking lot of the Church of God. Cordell lied to D'Angelo, pretending he needed help grabbing some equipment to bring back to the church. Instead, he took D'Angelo to his house, brutally raped him twice, then nonchalantly began asking the child about his family. After a while, Cordell told the 13-year-old he was going to kill him. D'Angelo told him, quote, "I only want to go to school and have a good education." Cordell began to forcefully tie the child up with duct tape, bashing him over the head non-stop with a wooden plank. Again, he put the deceased child in the trunk of his car, sped off to the beach, and concealed the body. Junior Ream was reported missing on July 29, 2003. He was last seen by his mother. Cordell confessed he had picked the 11-year-old boy up behind Christ the King Anglican Church and took him home. When they arrived, he instructed Junior to take a shower, but he kept saying no, which incensed Cordell. He forcefully bound Junior using duct tape. When the young boy began to scream his lungs out, Cordell viciously stabbed him in the neck with a knife. He took Junior's body to Barbary Beach. it was becoming a graveyard. Cordell apologized to the police that the boy had to die such a ghastly death. 14-year-old Desmond Roll was last seen by his mother on September 28, 2003. Cordell spotted Desmond while on his way to Williamstown at a park. He told the teenager that he knew his mother and brother in order to get Desmond to trust him. Afterwards, he drove them to a location surrounded by bushes where he handcuffed and raped the adolescent boy. Going even further, he sliced Desmond's throat, dragged him back to his vehicle, and began to sodomize and sexually brutalize him. After tossing his body into his car, Cordell headed for Barbary Beach. This time, he told police, he was testing out a, quote, new way to kill. Cordell had slashed Desmond's chest cavity until his organs were exposed, removing his heart. Next, Cordell dismembered his extremities. The prosecution dropped another bombshell in the courtroom, stating there was evidence that Cordell had also been committing bestiality. As Cordell had been admitted to Sandilands rehab facility in the past and had undergone physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, the prosecution did accept Cordell Farrington's plea of guilty to the charge of manslaughter, behaving with diminished responsibility. Cordell was asked if he had anything to say, and as he broke down into tears, he said, quote, "I didn't fully understand what happened, but I ask for forgiveness from the family members." Cordell's attorney mentioned that he had confessed to the crimes he committed and had suffered from a severe personality disorder. She put forward that preceding these atrocities, he had been a productive and law-abiding citizen. During the sentencing phase, Senior Justice Isaacs made sure to point out that the promising lives of 4 young boys had been snuffed out, and that the court could show no further degree of mercy to him other than what had already been afforded. There was also acknowledgement from the judge that Cordell allegedly suffered from a severe personality disorder. Senior Justice Isaacs described the homicides as, quote, horrific and not of someone who should be readmitted into society. When the families heard Cordell's plea to the lesser charge of manslaughter, they said it was a downright slap in the face and believed since Cordell Farrington would not be receiving the death penalty, that in itself was a colossal insult. Cordell was sentenced to life in prison on each of the 4 counts. While in prison, he would be receiving the counseling he requires. The court hoped that he would spend the rest of his natural life in jail. Relatives of the deceased children declined to talk after the hearing. Some of the family members had extreme emotional, uncontrollable outcries during the hearing, and many had been escorted out of the courtroom. At the time, Families for Justice President Reverend Glenroy Bethel, who represented the mothers, called on parents and guardians to heed the warning signs and safeguard their children. He explained the Grand Bahama community had become complacent and relaxed over the years, letting a number of children go unsupervised. He declared, quote, "We would not want to have history repeat itself like the Cordell Farrington case. We're hoping that that does not happen, but again, we cannot be blinded into thinking that Cordell Farrington was the only predator in our community capable of doing what he did. And that is the case of the missing boys of the Bahamas and Cordell Farrington. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and being so supportive of me and the podcast. I also wanted to let you all know that on April 7th, my new podcast will be available called Pop Culture News. It will be a bi-weekly podcast where I give you the latest scoop in the pop culture sphere. I've already set up most of the social media pages if you'd like to go follow those. You can follow on Twitter at Pop News Podcast, Instagram at Pop Culture News Podcast, and Tumblr at Pop Culture News Podcast. Also, don't forget the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival is happening from August 25th through the 27th, 2023 in Austin, Texas. You can get 15% off your attendee or VIP attendee ticket at truecrimepodcastfestival.com when you use the promo code REVERY. So, come meet everyone in Austin this summer and listen to all the panelists, podcasters, and so much more. You can find out everything at truecrimepodcastfestival.com and use the promo code REVERY for 15% off your attendee or VIP attendee ticket. I want to thank everyone on patreon.com/reverytruecrime. Jason, Jeff, Amanda, Zane, Gigi, Steve, Jade, Stephanie, Lorraine, Angel, TZ, Matt, and Chelsea. Thank you all so much for your extra support. Until next time, everyone, please stay safe and take care.